As we commemorate the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, we recognize that there's still much work to do in order to achieve both of these important goals, jobs and freedom. The most fundamentally important thing we can do is to protect the right to vote for every eligible American. It was during this week in 1920 that the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was certified. The 19th Amendment prohibits the denial of the right to vote to any citizen on the basis of sex. Effectively, this meant that women had the right to access to the ballot box. It sounds a bit curious and even puzzling, yet it was only 101 years ago. Today, we are fighting to protect the right to vote by pushing back against the regressive legislative actions that various state legislatures have taken, especially since the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Sections 5 and 4B of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These sections mandated pre-clearance for any state that had a history of discrimination in voting. Many of the states that have rushed to turn back the hands of time, southern states among them, would have been required to get approval for the efforts we have seen since 2013 to make voting more difficult for communities of color and other targeted communities. The recent Supreme Court ruling about Arizona's voting laws that require a voter to vote in his or her voting precinct, or the ban on ballot collection of early voting or absentee ballots except by certain persons, making it a felony if violated, has raised the importance of this moment. The Senate must pass H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and S1, the For the People Act, which ends dark money in politics and forbids partisan gerrymandering. These bills must be passed without delay. What's at stake? Not simply the right to vote, nor fairness in redrawing congressional lines after the decennial census, but also everything that is decided by the people's elected representatives. Policies on education, public and post-secondary, health care, including policies that address health disparities that have made the current pandemic more harmful and deadly in some communities versus others, housing, access to capital, recovery from the COVID pandemic, physical and human infrastructure, living wages, police reform, economic opportunity and jobs, free community college, and the list goes on and on. All of these policy proposals are directly affected by access to the ballot box. That is why the 1963 march was a march for jobs and freedom. This moment is about the freedom to have our voices heard and causes addressed, and about the need for economic opportunity that strengthens families and closes the racial wealth gap. What must you do on this day when there are marches and demonstrations in Washington, D.C. and around the country? First, put on your shoes and get stepping. It doesn't matter if you march on the congressional offices in your city, march on the Capitol building in your state, march on City Hall to engage local officials not to remain silent in this moment. We must all get to stepping, from Washington, D.C. to Austin, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia. Second, we must lift our voices, not simply while marching, but in text, tweets, social media outreach to elected officials, phone calls to our congressional offices and the White House, because we will not go quietly and we will not be denied. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come, treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last where the bright gleam of our bright star is cast. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. That was Frederick Douglass. Reverend Jackson reminds us that we don't get what we deserve. We get what we negotiate, and we negotiate by demand. Yes, we deserve the right to vote. The Constitution says so. But in this moment, we demand the protection of the right to vote because we, the people, say so. We will not be deterred. And in this moment, we will not be denied. So keep on marching, keep on demanding, and as Reverend Jackson reminds us, keep hope alive.